Welcome to Deschutes Public Library's online programming. I'm Liz Goodrich, part of the Deschutes Public Library's Community Relations team, and we're proud to have pivoted all of our programming as much as possible online during this COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we are here to learn about socially responsible investing. Our presenter, Jack Schniepp, is the founder of a local financial planning and investment management firm called Cascade Financial Strategies. His firm specializes in providing socially responsible investing. He authors the sribend.com blog, now in its 6th year. It provides information about ESG issues and tips for selecting sustainable and responsible investments. Cascade Financial Strategies is the sole Central Oregon member of the U.S. Forum for Sustainable and Responsible Investment, which is one of the only organizations where financial advisors can access resources, ideas, and the latest news regarding the sustainable investment realm. Jack graduated from Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California, with a degree in social science and a secondary teaching credential. He then went on to obtain a master's degree from East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania. He's an active participant with many Central Oregon nonprofits, and he and his wife, Stacy, reside in Bend and are involved in many local activities and organizations that revolve around their 8 children. Please welcome Jack Schniepp.
Thanks so much, Liz. And I'm really happy to be here. I'm always excited to talk about investing, especially socially responsible investing. So the introduction covered pretty much all I was going to say about Cascade Financial Strategies, except that I've been in the business now for 20 years, and I started at larger firms at Wells Fargo and Morgan Stanley. And I'm going to touch on kind of the firm's approach to socially responsible investing. So I thought that would be good to share that information up front. But what I'd like to cover today is giving you a good definition of what socially responsible investing is. And just the parameters that are involved when attempting to invest responsibly. And then I want to clear up a couple of misconceptions surrounding socially responsible investing, especially those regarding investment returns, because that's always a big question. And then third thing I'd like to do is provide you with some resources, some tools, so that you can get started on your own and hopefully go down this path and make your investments match your values, because that's really the first definition of socially responsible investing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. I've got a slide presentation that'll help me provide the information to you, and hopefully this will work just fine. It has been in the past. We're getting used to this during the COVID quarantine, aren't we? So jumping into, and I'm attempting to go to the next screen. There we go. These are kind of the terms that were used to describe socially responsible investing through the years. The first one you're probably recognized or familiar with, socially conscious investing. And that was for a number of years until it really started to gain some steam. And about 10 years ago, we started calling it socially responsible investing, and that kind of morphed into sustainable and responsible, which is focused more on environmental issues, which is the biggest issue that most people are looking into this. And really, I'm only throwing these up there to say they all mean the same thing for the most part. The last two, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and impact investing, have come on the scene in just the last few years. And it's really exciting what these mean and what they involve, and I'm going to jump into those. So ESG is the acronym that stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it is the criteria that is used to determine if an investment is socially responsible. So it's not really a term to describe it, but it's the actual criteria. So if a mutual fund company or a investor, financial advisor wants to look at a company or an investment, this term encompasses how they would evaluate that in terms of being socially responsible. So the environment is somewhat self-explanatory, but you might look at a company's natural resource use, their waste management, and of course climate change type issues that they're involved with. The social element looks at inside the company, the health and safety practices within their company and also their community, labor management, human rights, supply chains, those kind of things. So as you can see, ESG is not just about the environment, but other things as well. And then the last one, corporate governance, is corporate ethics and looking at the board of a company as far as their diversity and just the accountability that a board has, and shareholder rights as well. And so these are the tools to evaluate a company or an investment. And a company that meets the various standards is a company that's on the cutting edge, that's forward thinking, that's doing business the right way, which usually means we think it makes for a good investment. And I do believe that, and I'll show you that it actually does. The last term on that list that I first showed you was impact investing. And this is kind of a boring slide, but the impact that you can make with your investment dollars is mainly through shareholder advocacy. So not only are you finding companies that are doing things right, that are following the guidelines and principles that you value, but you can also influence companies to make a change. So for example, a mutual fund owns thousands of shares of various companies and bonds of various companies and things like that. And so they have a pretty loud voice. They are an actual owner, part owner in that company. So they have a right to speak with the executives of a company or to bring forth shareholder resolutions that get voted on by the company. They can pass new practices that involve the ESG criteria that we talked about. They might even do independent research and analysis to actually look into a supply chain or a company's climate policies, those kind of things. And then they can also contact other shareholders, letter writing, email campaigns, and even on down the list, congressional testimony. They can make an impact at annual shareholder meetings. But what happens here is through owning part of the company and through these means of shareholder advocacy, you can force a company to make good changes. So we can make maybe companies that aren't doing that great get a little better. So it's really exciting what's going on in that realm, and that is really growing right now. I threw this one in just to say that socially responsible investing is nothing new. It's been going on for centuries, where the economics of pressuring different companies or countries into making changes through investments has happened, throughout the centuries. And I have here, actually, that's John Wesley. I was intending for that to be the other John, and it's slipping my mind. Anyway, he fought to get rid of slavery in Great Britain, and he was able to accomplish that through economics more than through the politics. And then, of course, Rosa Parks and the civil rights movement, where they boycotted the bus system and really put pressure on the city that way. And then Nelson Mandela representing South Africa. That was really one of the first places where investments, companies, mutual funds, aside from political means, were able to make an impact on a country, because companies stopped trading on their own and stopped doing business with South Africa to try to help end apartheid. And then I have the Quaker guy here. It's probably not the best view of what the Quakers look like, but straight off the oatmeal box there. But Quakers were a group that refused to do business with anyone who did business dealing with the slave trade. So anyway, social responsible investing has been around for a while, and that's a little of the history. I also wanted to just share a little of my history in getting into it. And this is a Green America is a magazine that puts out a lot of great things, but once a year they grade all the chocolate companies. And it was through chocolate that I actually started looking at SRI investments. And I'll stop the sharing here just for a minute to talk about it. But I have, Liz mentioned that I have 8 kids. Well, I have 4 girls right in a row that are now young adults. And one of them did a speech on the forced labor of children, mainly in Africa in the cocoa trade. And because of that speech and the research she did, we as a family decided we're only going to have and use and consume fair trade chocolate, which means chocolate got a lot more expensive and we ate less. But one of the questions that they asked me once we had started doing this and made it a practice in our family was, what about your clients, Dad? Are they invested in any of these companies? And I was happy that Hershey was the company they mentioned, and it's not publicly traded. But it made me start thinking that I really need to take a look at this. And I had intended to, and when I was at the larger firms, and I would ask about it or look into it, the message there, and this is still the message for the most part, and I, again, was at Morgan Stanley and then Wells Fargo, the message was that you had to give up returns, investment returns, in order to invest in a sustainable, responsible way. And I didn't know if that was true or not. I just kind of took their word for it. But when I set up Cascade Financial Strategies in 2013, and after going through the chocolate phase with my kids, I started really researching and going to every conference that was out there. And I joined the US Sustainable Investment Forum, which was Liz also mentioned, which gave me great information on what's actually the truth about socially responsible investing. And that leads into the next part of what I wanted to share with you is providing just some real information on just kind of getting rid of some of the misconceptions that are out there regarding socially responsible investing. And this is the cover of a report that I ran across in 2015. It was by my old company, Morgan Stanley, which really, jumped out at me as well. But they did an extensive research project dating back decades, looking at socially responsible investments compared to standard investments. And what they found, and I've highlighted some here, and it's not the best screen, but I'll read part of that. But in this extensive research, they found that investing in sustainability has usually met and often exceeded the performance of comparable traditional investments. And then again, sustainable mutual funds had equal or higher median returns and equal or lower volatility. And they found a positive relationship between corporate profits and sustainability and their stock price. And then the last thing here, the long-term investments exceeded the S&P 500 by 45 basis points. So I found clearly that the research showed that you do not have to give up returns to invest according to your values. And since then, there have been numerous reports that have been backing up the same thing year after year. This is all the way back to 2015. So anyway, hopefully that clears up that misconception that I think probably many of you have heard or have thought about yourself with your own investments. This slide that I put in here is another way in which you might get better returns from your investments through investing sustainably. And showing just some of the logos here of companies that have had serious damage to their stock prices because they either had poor sustainability practices, obviously BP and Exxon, the share prices during the Gulf spill and the Exxon Valdez were devastating to shareholders. Volkswagen, with their cheating on the emissions rules in America, they actually put it into the computers within the cars so that it fooled the regulators, and now they're paying billions because of that. And then Facebook, kind of in the corporate ethics, the governance end of the ESG thing, where they had all of their issues with the last election and continuing on. And that hurt share prices for a while, although they're doing okay now. But investing in socially responsible investments can help you avoid issues like this, avoid these types of companies, which in the end should give you better returns. And I'm going to bring up a website which will show you clearly that this is the case, that right now, real time, if I compare the S&P 500 ESG index with, and let's do year to date, with the S&P 500. So the ESG index versus the traditional S&P 500. And you probably didn't see much of a change because they follow each other fairly closely. But down here, you can see that year to date, the ESG index is outperforming by a good portion, by 2%, the S&P 500. If we look at 1 year, and I'm loading a little slow, very similar, still outperforming 3%. We look at 3 years, and I've probably already made my point, but I have fun doing these graphs, so I'll go ahead and show them. So there's 3 years still outperforming, and if we go all the way out 10 years, we should get the same result as soon as it loads. So clearly you can see we don't have to worry about returns. You can align your values with your investments. And I'll move on with the slideshow here. Not only has SRI investing grown just in its ability to give investors the growth that they need, but more and more money is coming into ESG investing. And as you can see here by this graph, and this is put out by this Sustainable Investment Forum every 2 years, they do an extensive research. So we'll get another one in November. But in 2018, over $1 in $4 invested in U.S. markets had some sort of ESG guidelines when they were invested. A lot of that is coming from institutional investors. Large, big investors have been pouring money into this and been demanding that ESG investments be available and demanding that companies start meeting those standards. And this just reiterates the point that these are the amount of dollars total invested. And some of this is just market growth because we've had a really good 10 years in the stock market. But that's huge growth in ESG. And on this side, this graph over here shows a growth in the impact that ESG investments are having on companies. These are all shareholder proposals filed, and you can see the different subjects that they felt were important: corporate political activity, the environment, labor, equal employment, executive pay, human rights, and on down the line. Hundreds and hundreds of shareholder proposals filed and voted on. And these are things that are influencing companies. And I should have a graph from a few years ago, there were far fewer shareholder proposals. Impact investing is really, truly becoming a real thing, and it's growing very rapidly. Another area of growth is access to different types of socially responsible investments. This is a mutual fund that is offered by Pax Investments. It's called a Pax Elevate Fund, and it focuses on women in corporations. So you can see the criteria that they look at. They're trying to find companies that have a lot of women on their boards that are in executive management or CEOs. And part of the reason they're looking at this is that statistics have shown that these companies perform better. So why not try to find them in your investments? So through this mutual fund, you can really support women's causes and gender equity in many ways. So a fund just focused on that. And there's other funds that are similar that are focused on just one cause. There's also mutual funds that are put together according to certain values. So this one is a fund that's aiming to meet Christian values with their investments. And they're out of their purpose and values, they strive to honor God and serve clients by investing in companies that create a compelling value for the global common good. So doing well, doing good and doing well is the idea with this mutual fund company. And this next one, the Amana mutual funds, they follow Islamic finance practices in their investments. And interestingly, in 2008, it was their funds were the top performing funds. And you might be able to guess why, is because they avoided one area of the market, which was the banks. And that was one of the biggest areas that tanked. And now, in this time when oil prices have been driven to all-time lows, they have done well along with other ESG funds because they've avoided big oil companies as well. So anyway, that's just some new areas of growth in the stock market, or in the stock market, but also in socially responsible investing that give you opportunities to just find investments that meet your values and find ways to make your dollars make a real impact. Now, I'd like to just share a couple of resources that I think would be valuable to you. So I'm going to bring up another screen, and you can go to all of these yourself. And if I go too quickly through it, we have all of these resources on our website as well, so you can go there. So this first one is the USSIF, that's the Sustainable Investment Forum that I mentioned a couple times. Their website has a lot of great tools. So if you go there, they offer a free online course for individual investors, complete in 30 minutes. So you could give that a go, and I'm sure that it would be valuable. They also have this education center where I've taken courses and gotten different certificates from the USSIF, but they have simple ones like how do I SRI, sustainable investment basics. So some good things there. You can also search for a financial professional. And I check this monthly so that I can continue to say that I'm the only member in Central Oregon of the only organization that an advisor can belong to that's in the ESG realm. So let's make sure I still am. So I'm going to do 50 miles from Bend, Oregon. And I think I had my name written in there. That was the problem. So let's look again. Okay, 50 miles, and this better work. Here we go. All right, there we go. If I searched 100 miles, or I think 150, you'd see 10 or 15 names, because on the other side of the mountains, there are other members, but there are none on this side, except for us. Another resource for you, this social funds website. You can go here and they have a number of investment guides. This one is pretty good right here, investing in socially responsible mutual funds. It gives you a list of funds. This tab also, you can go there and screen different funds. And they have these free offers. You can order these and they send you a electronic copy of these different fund companies' publications that really give you a good education. So social funds is a good resource. Once you know what mutual funds you want to invest in, this might be a good place to take a look at, especially if staying fossil fuel free, if the climate change is the biggest issue that you want to address. This website is called Fossil Free Funds. And all you do is just enter the symbol of a mutual fund. So this is a TIA-CREF Social Choice International Equity Fund, and it receives a D as a grade, which might surprise you. And it did for me as well when I first started researching these things. This fund has a sustainable mandate, but as you can see, they have a ton of fossil fuel holdings, 16 million in these types, coal, oil, and therefore that's why they receive this D grade, 0 out of 5 badges. They have this system here. So this brings up another topic that is something that you might need a little more in-depth research, or you might need an advisor to help you with. But some of these socially responsible funds that are out there are the way that they evaluate and use their ESG criteria is that they look for companies that are best in class. So they're going to own every sector of the stock market, which means they're going to own energy companies, coal companies, oil and gas companies, but they're going to try to choose the best company, the best in class company. And that may fit your goals. You might want to own ExxonMobil if it's the best in class, and you think that owning that fund or owning that company through this mutual fund might bring change to that company, because obviously TIA-CREF, big company, they own a lot of shares. They could put pressure on that company through the shareholder resolutions that we talked about. So, but if you want to be completely fossil fuel free, you'll need to find a different fund than this one. And let me just, I'll enter one more just so you can see how it works. And I'll enter one that I use in my portfolios, the Brown Sustainable Growth Fund. Yay, it gets an A. And I knew that already, of course. But they don't own anything in the fossil fuel area. 5 out of 5 badges, and the fund's done great. It's had really good performance. So Fossil Free Funds is a good website resource for you. Morningstar, which many of you may have heard of, it's probably the largest company used by financial advisors to evaluate mutual funds and exchange traded funds. But they have a public site that you don't have to pay for, and that's what I'm on right now. So I plugged this Brown Advisory Sustainable Growth Fund into Morningstar. And if you go down to the bottom, Morningstar added this category just 2 years ago, I think, a sustainability rating. And that's another indicator of how much ESG has grown. So they give you a score, a sustainability score, and they tell you if it's a good score or not. 0 fossil fuel involvement, low carbon. So this fund gets a 4 out of 5 globes. That's their sustainability rating. So that's another way to test your funds. And then the last resource that I want to show you is our website. So Cascade Financial Strategies. Liz mentioned that there we are. Here I am, if you didn't see me at the beginning. And I do a blog, and you can see latest blog posts here, and you can get on our list and get our blog posts when we put them through, but they're always about, well, they're 90% about socially responsible investing. Sometimes we just do investments or economics in general. But we also have some resources in here that you can go to. And there are websites, and we mentioned the fossil-free websites there. And there's our blog. And the USSIF website is also in here, so you can go there to get on that, and some others. And then we also have featured articles. So here's the USSIF's 2018 trend report, where I got some of the slides for this presentation, and then some other that we post on there. So one other thing, and it's not popping up, but when you get on our website, there's a spot that you can go to get an evaluation of your investments and to have us give you a review of how responsible your current investments are. And my office manager is going to be upset with me for not knowing where that is on the website, but it usually pops up, so I didn't think I had to look for it. But if you would like that, you can contact us through the website too, and we can run your investments through. We can run your investments through our criteria and give you an idea of how well you're tracking, and give you some ideas possibly on what can be improved. So yeah, so hopefully those are some tools for you to get going on your own with socially responsible investing, and hopefully you can have confidence that you don't have to give up investment returns to be able to do it, and you really can match your values and make an impact on the way business is done in America and abroad. So hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Hey, I just have a couple of questions that came up for me while I was watching your presentation.
Great.
You mentioned a couple of different industries, fossil fuel in particular, that have been making changes in how they do business. I'm wondering what other sector you might see change on the horizon because of SRI investing. What other sector might be feeling the pressure?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if this applies to just one sector, but an area that we're seeing very good change is just with corporate ethics, as far as they're being required to report far more now. They're being more transparent. They're also looking into their supply chains, and to make sure that, you know, if they have a factory in Indonesia, that, you know, they're taking care of their people there as well. And that's more across the board. And so whatever sector, not just one area of the market. And then, of course, I showed you the gender equity type mutual funds that are out there, and we're getting more diversity because really companies are finding out that, hey, our investors and the people that we're providing products for, they're demanding these things. And if we want to keep doing business with them, we're going to need to change. We're going to need to put these things in place. So it's been great to see.
Yeah, I find it really interesting that people are working to match their values with their investments, and I think that's important. I think that's an important change that's happening. So, Jack, I want to thank you for taking the time today to share your wisdom, and encourage people, if they have further questions or want some advice, to reach out to you. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.